Texas is not just a spot on the map, it is a giant natural proving ground where evolution turned the survival settings all the way up. In summer, the ground here cracks open under 110-degree heat, and in winter, a freeze can come down out of the north and knock a full-grown animal off its feet. Thousands of miles of open country, where behind every mesquite bush and every sharp ledge of rock, there is something ready to do whatever it takes for one more breath. Welcome to a world where nature stayed raw, wild, and completely without mercy. You know, when people hear the word plains, they usually picture a flat, empty field, but the plains of Texas are something else. They are an ocean. Only instead of water, you have hard grass and dust. Picture a piece of country the size of France, and almost all of it is an arena for a constant fight over resources. The wildlife here is unusual because it has to be two-faced. Animals are required to be all-purpose soldiers. If you cannot take a hard freeze in winter and 110 in summer, you do not last here. Texas is a crossroads of worlds. From the east come the humid, piney woods and swamps of the deep south. From the south push the hot deserts of Mexico, and out west the land rises up into real mountains. Each of those worlds has its own rules, but it is the open country that shapes the character of the animals here. There is no dense forest to hide in. You are always in the open. Either you run faster than everything else, or you are a master of camouflage, or you are strong enough that you do not care who sees you. There are creatures out here that remember the mammoths, pronghorn with their strange but brilliantly designed bodies, coyotes that will trail prey for miles across burned ground, little kit foxes that can go for months without a drink of water. These are not just animals. They are biological machines, sharpened by millions of years of selection in some of the hardest conditions on the continent. Look at the sky. Golden eagles soar so high they look like specks, but they can see every movement of a mouse on the ground. In this chapter, we are only opening the door to a world where the space itself presses down on you, and the silence can only be broken by the wind or the death cry of something being taken. This is wild Texas. There are no halftones here, only life and only death. And that is exactly what makes this place so magnetic for anyone who wants to see nature that has not been cleaned up for the camera. If you saw this animal for the first time, you would think it was a visitor from another planet, the pronghorn. It is probably the strangest and at the same time the most successful animal on the Texas plains, and its story is one of the wildest on the continent. This is the fastest land animal in North America. It holds 55 miles an hour, and it can hold a high speed for miles, not seconds. Nothing alive here can catch it, and that raises an obvious question. Why is it built that way when the fastest predator out here is a coyote it could leave behind without trying? The answer is that the thing it was built to outrun is extinct. There was an American cheetah on these plains during the Ice Age, and the pronghorn is still running from a ghost 10,000 years after the last one died. Its other tools are just as strange. Its eyes are enormous, set high on the sides of its skull, and they work almost like a pair of built-in binoculars, picking out movement several miles away across open ground. Its windpipe, heart, and lungs are oversized for its body, so it can pull in enormous amounts of air at a dead run. Pronghorn are true wanderers of the plains. In the Texas Panhandle, they move constantly, drifting across the grassland following the green. Picture the sight. A group of them lifting off across the flats, like the ground itself started moving. But a pronghorn's life is full of hardship. These animals came through the age of mammoths and saber-toothed cats, but they are badly exposed to disease and to the cruelty of the weather. And they have one crippling flaw. A pronghorn does not jump. It evolved on open ground with nothing to jump over. So when it meets a fence, it will not go over it. It goes under, or it runs the fence line looking for a gap, or it does not get through at all. In a hard winter, when a blizzard comes down out of the panhandle, herds pile up against net wire fences they cannot cross and die there in the thousands, unable to reach the country a few feet on the other side. In moments like that, the plains turn into an enormous graveyard, and that is when the wildlife of Texas shows its teeth. The feast begins for the ones that live on the dead. Golden eagles and coyotes get easy meals, but the pronghorn always comes back. They breed fast, does often have twins, and within a few days of birth, a fawn can run alongside its mother. That is the strategy: numbers and speed. Ancient shadows still crossing the great grassland, reminding us what the earth looked like at the dawn of the human story. Now, forget the wolves from fairy tales. The coyote of Texas is a completely different story, and it is probably the most successful predator in North America. It is lean. Its coat is the color of dry grass, and in its eyes there is the endless distance of the plains. This is not a second-rate animal filling in for the wolf. It is the animal that took over when the wolf was removed, and nothing we have ever done has been able to stop it. Out on the open plain, there is no dense tree to hide behind for an ambush. Here, you are visible from 2 miles off, so the hunting strategy is completely different. The coyote is a master of logistics. It knows the movement of the deer and the pronghorn better than any map. Coyotes will follow prey for days, picking off the weak, the sick, and the ones that fall behind. It is harsh, maybe, but that is the sanitation role a predator plays. Without it, the herds would rot from the inside. The endurance of this animal is beyond understanding. It can cover 40 or 50 miles in a night, just working its territory. Its feet are built for hard ground and for the thorns that go through ordinary boots in a second. But the most interesting thing is the social structure. A coyote can live alone, as a pair, or in a family group, and it shifts between those depending on what the country gives it. Some work a target while others wait in a low draw to cut off a panicked animal. Sometimes they go after jackrabbits, which takes incredible agility, because a jackrabbit on the flats is a master of sudden turns. And here is the part people never believe. We spent a century trying to wipe the coyote out. Bounties, poison, aerial gunning, all of it. And it did not shrink the population. It spread it. When coyote numbers get hit hard, the survivors have larger litters, and the young scatter further to find empty territory. The animal that was supposed to disappear now lives in every single county of this state, from the far desert to the middle of Dallas and Houston. Coyotes in Texas are also astonishingly secretive. You can drive hundreds of miles and never see one. But be sure of it, dozens of pairs of eyes followed every move you made. They are the invisible owners of this land. Lift your eyes higher. Where the sky meets the horizon, there it is, the golden eagle. This is not just a bird, it is a perfect dive bomber. A wingspan close to 7.5 feet lets it soar for hours, barely moving a feather, riding the columns of hot air rising off the baked ground. The eyesight of a golden eagle is something beyond human ability. Imagine being able to make out the movement of a ground squirrel from a mile up. When it folds its wings and goes into a dive, its speed can pass 150 miles an hour. In that moment, it becomes a living missile. Its talons can break bone and crush a skull. In the wildlife of Texas, the golden eagle holds a unique place. It hunts everything that moves, from small rodents to full-grown jackrabbits and foxes. There are records of these birds attacking young coyotes, and out in West Texas, they are the main aerial threat to newborn pronghorn. It seems like madness, a bird against a coyote. But the force of a golden eagle's strike is such that a predator on the ground has no chance if the attack lands clean. This is the top of the food chain. And these eagles are surprisingly devoted parents. They build enormous nests on cliffs and rare tall trees and use them for decades. Watching a golden eagle turn slow circles over the emptiness, you understand that to it, the plains are not a hostile place. They are one huge hunting estate where it is the only lord. Now let's move west to the Chihuahuan desert country of the Big Bend. People call this the loneliest place in Texas. The landscape here is genuinely Martian. Pale limestone, chalk cliffs, and an absolute shortage of water. It looks like nothing could survive. But the wildlife of Texas surprises you again. Right here, among the silent canyons, live desert mule deer that move as if they never touch the ground, and pronghorn that drift across flats where the heat shimmers. The javelina is the picture of caution out here. It has a good nose and ears set for the smallest sound. Javelina do not form the giant herds the pronghorn do. They prefer small family bands. Their main defense is standing together, a wall of animals with the young in the middle. Their gray-brown color blends perfectly into the desert brush, but it is not only the plant eaters that live here. In this hard country, you can meet the collared peccary, the desert mule deer that can live off the toughest brush and cactus that nothing else will touch. And if you dig deeper into the rock crevices, the Texas alligator lizard, or even a badger. And there is a small predator out here as fearless and aggressive as anything twice its size, the American badger. Low, wide, built entirely for digging, and for a fight it never backs down from. Life in the Big Bend is a constant search for balance. Every animal here is a narrow specialist. One knows how to pull moisture out of the morning fog. Another sleeps in a deep burrow through the day and only comes out to hunt under the cool cover of night. This place does not forgive a mistake, but the ones that live here have reached perfection in the art of staying alive, where death looks like the only logical outcome. If you thought Texas was only an endless yellow sea of grass, you were wrong. Out west, the land suddenly stands up on end, turning into forested peaks that hold snow in winter. These are the Guadalupe and Davis Mountains, sky islands, where a piece of the Rocky Mountains got stranded down in the desert. Here, the air smells of pine and the cold water of mountain springs, and the forest sets the rules. And the main character of these places is the elk, a genuine forest titan. An elk is a mountain of muscle that can push 700 pounds. In autumn, during the rut, these mountains fill with a sound that puts a chill down your spine. It is the bugle of a bull elk. It sounds like something between a train whistle and the cry of a wounded animal. That is how they lay claim to territory and to the females. All the power of wild nature is in that sound, a primeval call that has not changed in thousands of years. And here is a strange twist that fits this whole state. Elk were wiped out of Texas by the late 1800s. The ones bugling in these mountains today came back, brought in and rebuilt from other stock, and now they run wild in country they had vanished from completely. But alongside the giants, in these same mountains, lives one of the strangest animals on the continent, the ringtail. It is a small relative of the raccoon with an enormous striped tail longer than its own body, huge dark eyes, and a face that looks permanently startled. It is the state mammal of Texas, and almost nobody has ever seen one because it is a creature of the night and the rock. It is an acrobat. It can climb a vertical crack by pressing its feet against both walls, and it can turn its back feet completely around to come straight down a cliff face head first. In the wildlife of Texas, these mountains work like a refrigerator. They hold on to species that need cool air and moisture, animals that could never survive out on the desert floor below. This is a completely different world, where instead of the dust of the plains, there is deep shade under the pines, and life moves slower, but it is no less severe. Every tree, every fallen trunk is somebody's shelter or somebody's ambush. Let's climb higher to where the trees give out and there is only bare rock and sky. Up on the high ledges of these ranges lives a legend of its own, the mountain lion. They call it the ghost of the mountains, and that is not an exaggeration. You can live in this country your whole life and never once see one. The mountain lion is the crown of cat evolution, built for a life in places where a person is gasping for breath after 100 yards uphill. Look at its tail. It is long, thick, and heavy, close to a third of the animal's length. That is not decoration. It is a counterweight that lets the lion make turns at full speed down a slope no other animal that size could take. It hunts alone, and it has no right to a single error. A broken leg from a bad landing means a slow death by starvation. So the lion is a master of the ambush. Its coat blends into gray rock and dry brush perfectly. Its main prey out here is desert mule deer, and it takes javelina, and it will take almost anything smaller that gives it the chance. Hunting in this high country always carries the risk of the fall itself, and it does not roar. It physically cannot. The structure of its throat is different from a true lion or a tiger, so a mountain lion is silent. It attacks without a sound, kills without any noise, and vanishes into the rock, leaving nothing behind but a set of very large prints. Nearby, out in the thin air, you can hear the alarm calls of scaled quail. They are the first to spot the cat and raise the warning. The mountain lion's life is one of solitude. It has no pack. It has only its territory and the endless ridges. Looking at one, you understand that this animal belongs to this world more than anything else does. It is the mountains. Let's drop down a little into the oak and juniper canyons of the hill country and the Edwards Plateau. Here lives another heavyweight, the American black bear. In Texas, the black bear is a comeback story of its own. It was almost entirely gone from the state for most of the 20th century, shot and trapped out. Then, on its own, it began walking back in from Mexico across the Rio Grande into the Big Bend and the mountains of the West. Do not be fooled by the name. Many of them out here are brown or cinnamon, colored to match ground burned pale by the sun. This is a powerful and dangerous animal. The local bear is a real gourmet. In spring, it comes out onto the south-facing slopes where the first green appears, and it grazes, eating young shoots. But its true passion is anything full of calories: acorns, pecans, insects, cactus fruit. The country here is dotted with the burrows of ground squirrels and other rodents, and a bear will spend hours digging one out, rolling aside boulders that weigh hundreds of pounds like a child's blocks. One meal like that and its fat store for winter is set. The bear in Texas faces serious competition, though. Feral hogs, which are everywhere in this state in unbelievable numbers, want the same best feeding grounds and the same roots. It is fascinating to watch a bear when the wild fruit ripens. In these canyons, bears turn into gardeners. They climb the trees, break branches, and fill their stomachs with sweet fruit. It is a period of temporary truce. But do not forget, a bear stays a bear. It is unpredictable. Its strength is such that one blow of a paw can break a hog's spine. In the wildlife of Texas, the bear is the balance between calm and sudden fury. It is the master of these slopes, and every step it takes through the woods is wrapped in silence. Birds and small animals go still, making way for the king of the hills. Now we head to one of the harshest places in Texas, the salt flats and creosote basins of the far west, where the ground bakes so hard you could fry an egg on it. But this is exactly where the world of reptiles flourishes. The most impressive of them is the Texas indigo snake. It can reach 8 feet long, which makes it one of the longest snakes in the country, and it is not venomous at all. It is a smart, aggressive, incredibly tough hunter, and here is the part that matters. It is essentially immune to rattlesnake venom, and it hunts and eats rattlesnakes, swallowing them whole. Where there is a healthy indigo population, rattlesnake numbers go down. Speaking of rattlesnakes, this country is their kingdom. The western diamondback lives here, one of the most dangerous snakes on the continent, responsible for more serious bites than any other snake in the United States. Its strike is faster than you can react to, and its venom destroys tissue and works against the clock. But how do the small creatures survive in this oven? Look at the kangaroo rats. They are jumping machines on long back legs. They come out of their burrows only at night, when the heat lets go. A kangaroo rat can jump 9 feet clear to escape a sidewinder, another venomous snake of these parts, and there is footage of one kicking a striking rattlesnake in the head in midair and landing on its feet. In this chapter, we see the wildlife in its most economical mode. Minimum water, minimum movement by day. The survivor here is the one that knows how to wait and the one that does not fear thirst. The desert does not forgive wasted motion. Every breath costs something, and every drop of water is worth its weight in gold. This is a world of cold-blooded killers and brilliant masters of escape. Texas knows how to surprise you. In the middle of the dry country, huge wetlands suddenly appear, like the marshes of the upper Gulf Coast and the vast Caddo Lake in the east. This is a world of endless reed and cypress, as dense in places as any jungle. Bald cypress trees stand in the black water, draped in Spanish moss, and it is perfect cover for feral hogs. In these flooded thickets, the hogs feel completely safe. They cut whole tunnels through the growth and move through them unseen. The hogs here are real athletes. They have to swim constantly, crossing from one island of high ground to another, and in that water, danger waits for them. Not alligators, though there are plenty of those in East Texas, but big alligator gar and enormous catfish that can take a piglet off the surface. But the real hidden hunter of these places is the bobcat. It is much larger than a house cat, with tufted ears like a small lynx. It is a perfect hunter of birds and small mammals. A bobcat can slide through the reeds without a sound and launch a sudden ambush, snatching prey right out of the water. Over the surface of the water glide roseate spoonbills and white ibis by the thousands. And above it all soar bald eagles, which have made an enormous comeback in Texas. With their wingspan close to 7 feet, they look like the true owners of the sky. The wildlife of these wetlands is proof of how water transforms dry country. Here, life pours out of everything. It is loud, it is wet, and it is very dangerous. This is country where the jaguar once lived, and the ocelot still does, in tiny numbers down near the Rio Grande, and the spirit of the great cats can still be felt in the rustle of the reeds and the heavy stare of a boar. You know what the strangest thing about Texas is? It has a coast. And along that coast, in the shallow bays and lagoons of the Gulf, live animals whose lives are one long survival test. Picture winter on the upper Texas coast. It almost never freezes here, and then, once in a decade, the Arctic comes straight down the middle of the continent with nothing to stop it, and the temperature crashes below freezing for days. The shallow bays go cold so fast that the sea turtles living in them cannot escape. A sea turtle is cold-blooded. When the water drops suddenly, its body simply stops working. It cannot swim. It cannot lift its head. It floats to the surface, stunned and helpless, and the wind pushes it up onto the flats. They call it cold stunning, and when a hard freeze hits, thousands of green sea turtles and the rare Kemp's Ridley wash up along the shore in a single event, unable to move. And the Kemp's Ridley is the rarest sea turtle on Earth, and its whole story runs through this coast. Nearly all of them nest on a single stretch of beach in the Western Gulf. In the 1940s, there were tens of thousands of nesting females on that beach in one day. By the 1980s, the entire species was down to a few hundred nesting females total. Everything alive now came back from that edge, through decades of people walking the beaches, protecting the nests, and carrying the animals off the cold flats by hand when the freezes come. And here is the paradox. A couple of months pass, the cold lets go, and onto these same flats step animals that belong somewhere tropical. Whooping cranes. These are the tallest birds in North America, close to 5 feet, and they are one of the rarest. In 1941, there were 15 of them left alive on the entire planet. 15. Every whooping crane in existence today came from that one tiny group. And every winter, the wild flock comes down to one stretch of the Texas coast to feed on blue crabs in the marsh. The contrast is insane. Where a freeze just left turtles helpless on the mud, a bird that came back from 15 individuals now walks the same shoreline. That is Texas, a place where nature seems to mock common sense, mixing hard freezes and near tropics on the same patch of ground. When you drive across the plains in summer, it seems like nothing lives out here at all. The grass is burned white, dust hangs in the air, the sun beats down hard enough to soften the road. Silence. But it is an illusion. All the life just went underground. Beneath your feet lies a genuine invisible empire, cities with millions of residents, and the chief architects here are the prairie dogs. A prairie dog is a plump, slow-looking rodent, but do not judge by appearances. They build colossal underground systems. Their towns can cover hundreds of acres, and once held some of the largest concentrations of mammals ever recorded on the continent. There are sleeping chambers, nurseries, listening posts, and even separate rooms used as toilets. Prairie dogs are terrible worriers, and you can understand why. There is always one standing guard. It spots the shadow of a hawk or the outline of a coyote, lets out a sharp bark, and the whole colony vanishes underground in an instant. Their alarm system is so detailed that researchers believe the calls carry information about what kind of threat is coming, how big it is, and how fast. But what do you do when the enemy comes right into your house? Meet the black-footed ferret. You have probably never heard of it, and it is one of the most remarkable stories in North American wildlife. It is a slim, masked predator built to go straight down a prairie dog burrow, and it lives on almost nothing else. And it was declared extinct twice. By the 1970s, people believed there was not a single one left on Earth. Then, in 1981, a ranch dog in Wyoming killed one, and it turned out a tiny colony had survived. Every black-footed ferret alive today came from a handful of animals, 18 of them taken into captivity to save the species, and they are being released back onto the prairie dog towns of the Great Plains, including in Texas. An abandoned or captured burrow is immediately taken over by somebody else. Kit foxes and swift foxes hate to dig for themselves. They just find an empty prairie dog apartment and move in. And in the deepest, coolest side tunnels, rattlesnakes hide from the daytime heat, and so do burrowing owls, small, long-legged birds that nest underground and stand at the entrance in daylight, staring at you like a suspicious security guard. The underground of the plains is a densely packed megacity where there is a constant war over square footage and over cool air. If you cannot dig, you have to take. It is a hard rule, but it is the one that lets the wildlife exist when the temperature on the surface hits 115. The prairie sky. It is so enormous here that it seems to press down on the land. No trees, no mountains on the horizon, just an endless dome. In conditions like that, the sky becomes the main arena for survival, and it has its own heavyweights and its own unmatched snipers. Let's start with the heavy artillery. Have you ever seen a wild turkey take off? For a bird that spends most of its life on the ground, it is a shock. The Rio Grande wild turkey is a huge, heavy bird, and a big tom can weigh over 20 pounds. In spring, the males put on an incredible show. They fan their tails into enormous fans, puff their feathers out, drop their wings, and drum out a deep booming sound that carries across the country. It is a display older than history. But all that mass makes them vulnerable. A turkey has a hard time maneuvering, and it prefers to rely on its strong legs and excellent hearing to slip away on foot before the danger gets close. Now look at the sniper, the prairie falcon. If the turkey is a bomber, the prairie falcon is a fifth-generation fighter. It is a large falcon that specializes in hunting open country. It does not need to hide. Its whole tactic is height and unbelievable speed. A prairie falcon patrols the plains at hundreds of feet. The moment it spots a careless ground squirrel or a bird below, it folds its wings and drops like a stone. Its speed in that dive is insane. The prey often does not even have time to understand what happened. But a prairie falcon's life is not only successful attacks. The prairie air is full of competitors. Northern harriers, gliding low and graceful over the grass, will try to steal a kill. In this endless sky, there are constant dramas. There is no place to hide behind a branch or a leaf. Either you are faster or you are dead. Falcons, hawks, harriers, all of them share this huge space, turning the prairie sky into one of the most dangerous places on the continent. We have already talked about how hot it gets here in summer, but the real test of endurance comes in winter, and the most frightening word in the local animal's vocabulary is the freeze. Not just a cold night, but a blue norther, a wall of Arctic air that drops out of the north and takes the temperature down 40 degrees in an hour. When it comes with ice, the whole country locks up. The grass, the only food for the plant eaters, ends up sealed under a shell of ice like a concrete tomb. For many animals, this is a death sentence. Hooves slip and split open on the ice in a useless effort to reach food. In moments like that, the wildlife shows its hardest face. And here is where the wild horse comes onto the scene. Texas has free-roaming horses, descended from animals that got loose over centuries, and a hard freeze is the cruelest test they face. A horse is bigger and heavier than a deer, and its hoof is more powerful. They strike at the ice with such force that shards fly in every direction. They break their own way down to the grass, working like icebreakers. And you know what? Other, smaller animals often follow behind them. Deer and even birds pick up the exposed grass where the horses broke through the crust. It is a forced kind of partnership on the edge of dying. But for the predators, a hard freeze is a time of plenty. Coyotes do not go hungry in this period. Animals weakened by hunger, unable to break the ice, become easy targets. The coyote does not even have to run far. The prey is standing still, shaking with cold and exhaustion. The country in this time looks eerie. A white, glittering desert of pure ice, total silence, and a few dark specks of predators finishing off the ones that did not make it. And under the snow, in their burrows, the ground squirrels and prairie dogs sleep. Their hearts beat once every few minutes. They are in deep hibernation, and they could not care less about the frozen hell above them. The only thing that matters is whether spring comes before their fat runs out. The freeze is merciless. It culls the weak every year, leaving in Texas only the ones whose genes are forged out of steel. Now let's move south to where the Rio Grande winds through the thorn scrub of the border country. This river is like a blood vessel running through the dry body of the land, and around it a completely unique world has formed. The Tamaulipan thorn scrub and the last riverside forests of the lower valley. This is not a forest as we usually picture it. It is an impassable, thorny, dense jungle of mesquite, ebony, and cactus, laced with vines and studded with spines that will cut clothing to ribbons. Getting through it without a machete is almost impossible, but for the animals it is paradise. And here, in this green fortress, hides one of the rarest animals in North America, the ocelot. Not long ago, this beautifully spotted cat was on the edge of vanishing from the United States entirely. Fewer than 100 are left, almost all of them in a couple of patches of this thorn scrub down in the far south of Texas. The ocelot is perfectly built for life in the thorn brush. It can slip silently through a tangle of branches where a larger predator would get hung up. Its spotted coat makes it invisible against the broken light and shadow. As night falls, the thorn scrub comes alive. If you camp on the riverbank, you will not sleep. The howling of coyotes carries through every night. It is not the lonely howl of a single animal. It is a whole mad chorus that turns into something like hysterical laughter. There are a lot of them here. They roam the banks looking for carrion, frogs, and careless birds. And there are plenty of birds. The green jay, with its unreal lime green and blue plumage, is a genuine jewel of these places, found nowhere else in the country except this corner. Because of birds like it, bobcats keep constant watch, ready to sit in ambush for hours at a waterhole. Life in the thorn scrub depends entirely on the moods of the river. In spring, the water comes up and floods the low ground. Animals have to move to higher ground or crowd onto tiny islands of dry land. In summer, the water drops, exposing a thick layer of sticky mud, and in that mud you find deep prints of hooves and paws. It is an isolated, closed world with its own rules. The desert presses right up against the green. One step to the right and you are in waterless thorn scrub. One step to the left and you are in dense, wet growth boiling with life. It is a stunning contrast that makes the wildlife of the river forests of Texas so rich and so fragile at the same time. There is a place in Texas that did not exist on the maps a lifetime ago. Where there was once open ranch land and prairie, there is now a sea of oil derricks, and in the far west, sand. In parts of the state, the land has been reworked so completely by drought and by people that it looks like another planet. Cracked hardpan and blowing dust as far as you can see. It looks like the most post-apocalyptic landscape you could find. And yet, nature does not tolerate emptiness, and the wildlife has begun to take these broken places back, rewriting the rules of survival as it goes. The first to arrive are the insects and the arachnids. At night, this ground belongs to the solifugids, which people out here call wind scorpions or sun spiders. These are not spiders and they are not scorpions. They are monsters of the microscopic world. Picture a hairy thing the size of your palm that runs across the sand at the speed of a jogging person, waving a pair of enormous jaws. Solifugids are not venomous, but they are so aggressive that they will throw themselves at anything that moves, biting through the skin of lizards and small rodents. Their metabolism keeps them eating constantly, which turns them into the perfect cleanup crew of this new wasteland. They feel no pain and know no fear, perfect soldiers of a dead desert. Behind the small residents come larger predators. The kit fox, which we already mentioned, found itself new hunting grounds out here. The kit fox adapted with astonishing speed. These little foxes need almost no fresh water. They get all the moisture they need from the blood of their prey. They have learned to use old pipe, hollow equipment, and man-made cover as artificial dens, hiding there from the blazing sun by day. And by night, the coyotes come out onto this reworked land. You will find their tracks among the salt crusts and the dry rigs. They trail the scattered herds of pronghorn and deer that wander in from the edges, looking for the tough plants that manage to grow on this poisoned ground. The coyotes here are smaller than their plains cousins, and their coats are often dull from the alkaline dust. They wander the old workings like ghosts of what used to be here, a reminder that even where people have torn the land apart, wild nature still finds a way to survive. If you want to feel like you are on Mars without leaving Earth, go to the Badlands of the Texas Panhandle and the country around Palo Duro Canyon. This is the second largest canyon in the United States, cut over millions of years by a small river and by the endless wind, carving fantastic towers, columns, and giant stone shapes out of red and yellow rock. The landscape here is blinding red by day and soft pink at sunset. It is a land of absolute dryness and cutting wind, and here, among the sheer walls, live creatures for whom gravity seems to be more of a suggestion. The aoudad, or Barbary sheep. The aoudad is a strange case. It is not even native. It was brought here from North Africa and turned loose, and it took to the Texas Canyon country so completely that there are now more of them here than in their entire native range. What is astonishing is not the horns, but the way these animals move. An aoudad can gallop along a ledge a few inches wide over a sheer drop. Its hooves are built like climbing shoes. The hard edge catches the smallest bump of rock, and the soft pad inside works like a suction cup. Watching a group of them pour down a vertical wall to escape a predator is a sight that takes your breath away. They live where no coyote can follow, but they have a more serious enemy that can jump nearly as well: the mountain lion. In these canyons, the mountain lion is a hidden killer. It uses every shadow and every crack for an ambush. Its back legs are so powerful it can jump 18 feet straight up from a standstill. And down in the soft sand between the rocks hides the Texas horned lizard, the famous horny toad, an animal that once covered this state and has been disappearing for decades. It is built for this ground, flattened and colored exactly like the dirt, and when it is truly cornered, it does one of the strangest things in the animal world. It squirts a stream of its own blood out of the corner of its eye at the attacker, a spray that tastes foul to a coyote or a fox. Life in Palo Duro is the art of hiding in the stone and balancing over the drop. It is a harsh, graphic world where only the true acrobats and the invisible survive. Texas is not only harsh wasteland. Right in the middle of the state, along the Central Flyway, lie huge, shallow lakes and coastal marshes that turn into pulsing oases twice a year. Their special feature is that fresh and salt water mix here, creating a wild cocktail of different systems. Twice a year, these wetlands become the busiest airport in the world. Millions of birds flying from Central and South America up to Canada and the Arctic make their stop here. The air rings with their calls, and the water boils with beating wings. It is a true bird Babylon. The star of these lakes is the American white pelican. This bird looks like a living dinosaur with a huge beak and a leathery pouch and a wingspan past 9 feet. They are unmatched fishermen. Unlike the brown pelicans of the coast, which dive, the white pelicans work together, forming a line and driving fish into the shallows where they scoop them up as a team. When a flock of these giants settles onto the water, they operate like an organized fishing crew, leaving the fish no chance. Nearby rest elegant sandhill cranes, whose rolling calls carry over the reeds for miles. But wherever there is a huge gathering of tired, worn-out birds fresh off a long migration, there are always those ready to take advantage. Golden eagles and hawks patrol the skies over these lakes, watching for the sick and the ones falling behind. For a raptor, a mass migration is a buffet, and along the banks, in the dense growth and mud, badgers work at night, digging into nests, eating eggs and any chicks that have fallen. These wetlands show us the wildlife at its maximum density. It is an explosion of life, an incredible concentration of energy, and at the same time, a brutal conveyor belt of natural selection where weakness is not forgiven in the sky or on the ground. In the deep east of Texas, along the border with Louisiana, the land changes again into a dark, wet, tangled forest of pine and hardwood, cut through with slow black rivers and cypress swamps. This is a border world where the piney woods meet the bottomland swamp. And here, among the shadowed sloughs and dense thickets, lives one of the most secretive and least understood residents of the Deep South. Meet the alligator. If you look at an American alligator, you are looking at an animal that has barely changed in tens of millions of years. It is the closest thing to a living dinosaur on this continent, and East Texas is the western edge of its range. And it is another comeback. By the middle of the last century, alligators had been hunted so hard for their hides that they were nearly gone, and they were one of the first animals ever placed on the endangered list. Left alone, they recovered so completely that they came all the way back. An adult bull gator can pass 12 feet and lie in the black water for hours, invisible, only its eyes and nostrils breaking the surface. It is a patient ambush hunter that can go a long time between meals, its body running on almost nothing while it waits. But the alligator is not the only strange resident of these swamps. Down in the same cool spring-fed creeks lives an amphibian that seems to come from another age, the alligator snapping turtle. This is the largest freshwater turtle in North America, a 200-pound animal with a spiked shell and a beak that can take off a finger, and it can live longer than a human being. It does not chase anything. It lies on the bottom with its mouth open and wiggles a small pink worm-shaped lure on its tongue, and when a fish comes to investigate, the jaws close. Meanwhile, in the forest above the water, white-tailed deer move like gray shadows through the pines, and the pileated woodpecker, a crow-sized bird with a flaming red crest, hammers holes into the dead trunks loud enough to echo through the whole bottomland. East Texas is a refuge of oddities, a place where armored giants from the age of reptiles share the water with turtles that look like something carved out of stone, keeping their own hidden rhythm of life away from human eyes. Not far from the city of San Antonio and out across the hill country, the ground is riddled with something you cannot see from the surface. Caves. Texas sits on top of one of the largest cave systems in the country. Thousands of miles of limestone passages hollowed out of the rock over millions of years. And while the surface bakes at 110 or locks up in an ice storm, down here, time has stopped. Total, absolute darkness. Not one photon. The temperature holds at the same level all year. For many animals, these caves are the only way to survive the weather apocalypse overhead. And the residents of these dark places are bats, in numbers that are almost impossible to believe. In a single cave north of San Antonio, something like 20 million Mexican free-tailed bats gather every summer. It is the largest known concentration of mammals anywhere on Earth. When they pour out at dusk, the column of bats is so dense it shows up on weather radar, and it takes hours for all of them to leave. They spread out across the night sky and eat an astonishing tonnage of insects, including the moths that would otherwise destroy the state's crops, which makes them one of the most valuable wild animals in Texas, without anyone ever seeing them work. In winter, the ceilings of some caves turn into living carpets, where bats hook their claws into the rock, wrap themselves in their own wings, and drop into deep hibernation. The heartbeat slows to a couple of beats a minute. Body temperature falls close to the temperature of the cave. They hang like that for months, spending the fat they built up over summer as slowly as it can be spent. Below them, in the thick layer of guano on the floor, blind cave beetles and other creatures found nowhere else on the planet work through the only food available in a dead stone world. Some of these cave animals live their entire lives in a single cavern and have never seen light. And the strangest part comes in autumn, when the temperature outside starts to fall. Into these same caves and crevices come animals you would never expect to share space with anything. Snakes. Rattlesnakes need shelter from the cold, and they gather into deep cracks in the rock, sometimes dozens of them together, coiled into a single mass, and go dormant until spring. The same dens get used generation after generation for decades. The cave becomes an enormous natural bunker where flying mammals and venomous reptiles sleep side by side in the dark. Let's go back to the western canyons and the sheer cliff faces, smooth walls of limestone running down hundreds of feet. Without climbing gear, a person has no business there. But for birds, these are ideal building sites. At heights where a person would get dizzy, an incredible amount of life is going on. These are genuine cliff cities. The specialists here are cave swallows and cliff swallows. Small, fast birds shaped like darts. They build nests out of mud packed against the sheer rock and under overhangs, and they raise their young in colonies of hundreds, safe from anything that walks. No fox, no ringtail, not even a mountain lion can get down a smooth vertical face to their nests. Eggs and chicks are completely out of reach from anything on the ground. In summer, the noise around one of those colonies is unbelievable. Hundreds of birds shooting in and out all day, hauling insects up out of the canyon, and there are always plenty of insects. But in nature, there is no such thing as perfect defense. If the enemy cannot come by land, it will come from above. And that enemy is the peregrine falcon, the fastest animal on the planet. Peregrines do not care about sheer rock. They live on it themselves. When one decides to eat, it climbs high above the colony, folds its wings, and drops. Its speed in that dive passes 200 miles an hour. That is not an attack. That is a rifle shot. A flock of swallows scatters in panic, trying to confuse the hunter with chaos. But the peregrine has locked onto a single bird, and the strike of its talons in mid-air sounds like the crack of a whip. And this is another animal that nearly disappeared. Pesticides in the food chain thinned the eggshells of peregrines until almost nothing hatched, and by the 1970s they were gone from the eastern half of the country entirely. They were rebuilt, bird by bird, and they now nest on cliffs and on the sides of downtown Texas buildings. Texas is a trap in time. Many of the animals here got locked into their places thousands of years ago, when the last ice age ended and the climate warmed. The cool, wet country retreated, the deserts and dry grasslands spread, and the animals built for other conditions had to hang on wherever a scrap of the old world survived. Some of them are living fragments of a vanished age, relicts stranded in isolated springs and canyons and cool mountain pockets, cut off from everything like their own kind. The clearest example is the tiny fish that live in the desert springs of far west Texas. In a handful of isolated pools fed by water that comes up from deep underground, there are pupfish and gambusia that exist nowhere else on the planet, each population sealed off in its own spring since the Great Lakes of the Ice Age dried up. Some of them live in water that would be too warm or too salty for almost any other fish. Their entire world is a single pool a few yards across, and if that spring ever stops flowing, the species is simply gone. There are fish in this state whose entire global range is one pond you could throw a rock across. But even underground and out in the middle of nowhere, none of these small animals is truly safe. The badger, desperate for food, will dig straight down into a burrow system to reach whatever is sheltering there. And out on the open flats, the coyote hunts by sound, moving across the ground, stopping, tilting its head, listening for a rodent moving under the grass, then launching into a high pounce and coming down with both front feet exactly on the spot. Even the ones that hide underground cannot escape the rules of this country. Let's come down one last time to the low country in the peak of summer when temperatures pass 110. The small creeks have dried up. Stock ponds are cracked plates of mud. Water becomes the most valuable resource in the country, worth more than any meal. All that is left are a few deep springs and shrinking pools in rocky washes. And around those last pieces of water, the most tense scenes of the year play out. A water hole in summer is not a place to relax. It is the highest risk location in the entire landscape, the one point where every interest in the country crosses. Picture late evening. The sun is down, but the rock is still throwing heat. A porcupine works its way down toward a muddy pool, its quills rattling as it moves, a warning to everything nearby. I am going to drink. Do not interfere. It puts its face to the water, but its ears never stop turning. It knows perfectly well it is being watched. Around the pool, back in the dry brush, are the animals that also need water but would much rather have meat. Coyotes. They will not go at an adult porcupine. Those quills are not something a predator recovers from casually, and a face full of them means an animal that cannot eat and does not survive. So the coyote drinks quickly, nervously, watching in every direction. There is an unspoken truce at the water, and it hangs by a thread. If a young or injured animal comes down to that pool, the truce ends in a second. Predators know that thirst will bring everything to them. They do not even have to hunt. They just have to sit and wait. And in the crack between two hot stones, right at the water's edge, a western diamondback lies with its body half buried in sand. It needs the moisture too, but it did not come to drink. It came because small birds come down to the water at first light. A bird lands on a rock to take a couple of sips, and at that moment, the rock next to it moves. In a landscape running on a water deficit, the foothills turn into a hard game of chess. One wrong step toward the water, and you satisfy somebody else's thirst instead of your own. And now we come to the finale of our story, to the most ambitious and audacious experiment happening in Texas right now. It has to do with a great cat that this land lost. Once, not so long ago, the jaguar ranged all the way up into Texas, the largest cat in the Americas, a spotted giant that moved through the thorn scrub and the river bottoms. But the man with the rifle proved stronger. The last jaguars in Texas were killed generations ago. The land lost its top cat, and the whole system tilted. But there is a movement to bring the great cats back to the American Southwest. The jaguar still exists in northern Mexico, only a couple hundred miles south of the Texas line. And every few years a male walks north across the border on his own, into the mountains of Arizona and, people hope, one day back into the brush country of Texas. And you cannot simply release a great cat into empty country. First, you have to set the table for it. That is exactly why so much work now goes into rebuilding the prey base and protecting the last corridors of wild land along the river, so that if a jaguar ever comes back to stay, there is a world waiting for it. Imagine it, nature turning the clock backward, pronghorn herds thickening on the plains again, ocelots holding on and spreading out of their last thickets. Bighorn sheep wiped out of the West Texas mountains a century ago and brought back animal by animal, once again pouring down the cliff faces of the Big Bend. It is not just the rescue of one species, it is the restoration of a whole lost world. If it works, then years from now, in the rustle of the thorn scrub along the Rio Grande, a shape of golden black may move again. It proves the main thing. Yes, we did enormous damage to wild nature, but we are also capable of giving it a second chance. The wildlife of Texas is not just a collection of animals scattered across different climate zones. It is a single, incredibly complex and brutal machine. We saw how the pronghorn fights the ice shell of the freeze, how the golden eagle drops out of the sky like a stone, and how the ghostly mountain lion clings to life on the sheer rock. Here, weakness is punished instantly, but it is exactly that hardness that created animals of astonishing strength and beauty. The animals of Texas do not just survive in this furnace and this freezer. They made it their home. They sharpened their instincts to absolute perfection, proving that life can flourish where steel freezes and stone melts. Texas is often called the Great Empty, but you and I have just seen that this emptiness is filled to the brim. It is an arena of constant struggle, where dramas play out wilder than any blockbuster. The wild nature here is fragile. It asks for our respect and our protection, especially now, as we try to fix the mistakes of the past. Thank you for coming this long way with me. If you, like me, are amazed by the sheer power of the natural world, share the video, write your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget that the real world is far more interesting than the one we see out the window. See you on the next expedition.